The International Criminal Court. What exactly is it? What is its role? And is it truly international? Let's find out. The court began its work in 2003, but its treaty, the Rome Statute, was adopted in July 1998. More than 120 states are party to the Rome Statute, but that doesn't include the US, Russia, India, Israel, or China. Although this statute was negotiated within the United Nations, the ICC is not actually a part of the UN. It does, however, report annually to the UN General Assembly. It is also separate from other UN initiatives you may have heard of, such as the ICTY, or the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, which was set up to deal with crimes committed during the Balkans conflicts of the 1990s. Located at The Hague in the Netherlands, the ICC is not meant to be a substitute for national courts, but it can intervene when a state is unable or unwilling to investigate and prosecute accused criminals. The court aims to deal with the most serious crimes: genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the crime of aggression. Let's take a moment to define these terms. Genocide is when someone has the intent to destroy, in part or in whole, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. This can be done through killing, causing serious bodily or mental harm, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. War crimes include grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions and other violations of the laws and customs of armed conflicts committed as part of a plan or policy or on a large scale. It includes murder, mutilation, torture, international attacks on civilians, sexual violence, and creating child soldiers. It even includes deliberate attacks on hospitals and houses of worship. Then there are crimes against humanity, which are part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population, including extermination, enslavement, forcible transfer of a population, forced sterilization, and apartheid. It occurs as persecution of an identifiable group on political, racial, national, ethnic, cultural, religious, or gender grounds. An example is Bosco Ntaganda, who was convicted by the ICC on 13 counts of war crimes and 5 counts of crimes against humanity in the Democratic Republic of Congo, including rape, murder, ethnic persecution, and deliberately targeting civilians. He's been sentenced to 30 years by the court, but is appealing the verdict. And then there's a crime of aggression. This happens when one state uses armed force to plan, initiate, or execute an act against the sovereignty of another state. So what has the ICC done so far? For a case to begin at the ICC, the Office of the Prosecutor must determine if there's enough evidence of crimes of sufficient gravity within the court's jurisdiction, if there are genuine national proceedings, and if opening an investigation would serve the interests of justice and the victims. The ICC does not prosecute anyone who was under the age of 18 at the time the crime was committed, only prosecutes individuals rather than states or governments, except for the crime of aggression, and the defendant is innocent until proven guilty. The defendant also has a right to information in a language that he or she fully understands. A case closed without a guilty verdict can be reopened if new evidence is presented. If a case falls outside the jurisdiction of the court, the Security Council needs to refer the case. At the moment, the court has 9 preliminary examinations, 13 situations under investigation, 28 cases, and 14 defendants at large. The ICC has indicted or formally charged after conducting an investigation more than 40 people, convicted 8, and acquitted 2. Individuals found guilty by the court include Germain Katanga of the DRC and Ahmed al-Mahdi of Mali. High-profile cases include Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, ousted Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir, and Laurent and Simone Gbagbo, the former president of the Ivory Coast, and his wife. Then there are defendants whose cases have been closed because of their deaths, like Libya's former leader Muammar Gaddafi and high-ranking Lord's Resistance Army commander in Uganda, Raska Lukwia. The court does not have its own police or enforcement body and has to rely on states to extradite those who are indicted. This can pose a problem, as in the case of Omar al-Bashir. He was charged in 2009 for crimes in Sudan's Darfur region while he was a sitting head of state. It wasn't until this February, 11 years later, that the nation's current rulers agreed to hand him over to the ICC. Had they not agreed to, he still would not face trial. And as of now, they still haven't extradited him anyway. There's also the Trust Fund for Victims that was created within the Rome Statute to implement court-ordered reparations and provide support for victims and their families, but is not officially part of the court itself. It is interesting to note that 10 of the 13 situations under investigation are all from African countries. And all of the 28 cases at the court, some of them now closed, and the 14 defendants at large are from an African nation, even though international crimes happen across the globe. The African Union even suggested a mass withdrawal of member African states in 2017 over the disparity. There are now, however, preliminary examinations underway for crimes committed in Colombia, Palestine, Ukraine, the Philippines, and for the UK's role in the latest Iraq War. And the 3 non-African situations under investigation concern Georgia, the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar and Bangladesh, and the current war in Afghanistan. It's this war in Afghanistan and a look at the situation in Palestine that has upset the United States. In June, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order imposing sanctions on several ICC officials.
As far as America is concerned, the ICC has no jurisdiction, no legitimacy, and no authority.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo officially announced the sanctions on September 2nd against 2 officials, including ICC Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda, saying the court was using illegitimate attempts to subject Americans to its jurisdiction. The UN Secretary General expressed concern and said that the UN will continue to closely follow the developments. And Bensouda's native country of Gambia has urged the US to reverse the sanctions on her and her top aide. Washington's move comes in opposition to the ICC's ongoing investigations into crimes committed by U.S. forces in Afghanistan and the court's preliminary inquiry into Israeli crimes committed in the Palestinian territories. The ICC has called the U.S. sanctions unprecedented and being used as threats and coercive actions against it. The Trump administration has called the investigations illegitimate since the U.S. and Israel have not ratified the Rome Statute. But the statute includes jurisdiction of crimes committed by non-parties on the territory of a state that is party to the statute, which include both Afghanistan and the Palestinian territories. The U.S. had signed the Rome Statute during Bill Clinton's presidency, though it wasn't ratified, but it was later revoked by George W. Bush. The ICC faces elections in December for the court's next prosecutor and 6 new judges. Most of its attention has so far been in Africa, though it's starting to reach out to other regions. But there's still no mention of possible crimes in places like Yemen or Bahrain committed by rich Gulf monarchies. The UN has warned that Bahrain's arbitrary detentions may constitute crimes against humanity. And on September 11th of this year, a UN group of experts called on the Security Council to refer the situation in Yemen to the ICC. Is the ICC able to do its job without bigger nations signing on? What other options are available?